Title at the Graveside. Chapter 1. The Echo of Absence. A whale was 52, a man carved from quiet grief and the steadfast routine of a life lived for someone else. His son, Shay, now 25, was the living testament to a love that had been cruelly snatched away. Louise, her name, even after all these years, was a soft echo in the halls of their home, a scent of lavender that lingered in the corners of a whale's memory. She had been 48 when she died, a young mother with a laugh that could dispel shadows. Shay had been a baby, too young to remember her smile, her touch, or the mystery that had enveloped her final moments. The official report had been vague, inconclusive. No foul play, they'd said, but no clear cause either. It was a void, a question mark suspended over their lives, leaving a whale with a profound, aching emptiness that no amount of time or paternal devotion could fully soothe. He had poured all his love, all his focus, into raising Shay, ensuring his son felt the embrace of two parents, even with one absent. Shay had grown into a thoughtful, independent young man, a mirror of a whale's quiet strength, but with a vibrant spark that was undoubtedly Louise's legacy. Their house, a comfortable but slightly dated two-story in a quiet suburban street, was filled with the silent rituals of the shared history. Dinner together every night, Shay's stories from work, a whale's gentle advice. Yet, beneath the calm surface, a whale felt an increasing tremor of loneliness. His friends were mostly married, their lives intertwined with partners, and a whale, ever the widower, felt like a third wheel, an anomaly. He'd tried dating in the early years, a few awkward encounters that only cemented his feeling that no one could ever compare to Louise. He'd resigned himself to a solitary existence, wrapped in the warmth of fatherhood. Until that dark street. Chapter 2. A Glimmer in the Gloom. It was a Tuesday night, late. A whale had been helping a friend with a stalled car, and the detour home took him down a narrow, dimly lit alleyway he rarely used. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant city fumes. A figure emerged from the shadows near a lamppost, startling him. A woman. She wasn't young, not beautiful in the conventional sense, but there was an arresting quality to her, a kind of wild grace. Her eyes, even in the poor light, seemed to hold a strange, deep luminescence. Lost, dear? She asked, her voice a low, husky purr that resonated unexpectedly within him. A whale, usually reserved, found himself replying, just taking a shortcut. You, waiting for the moon to speak, she said with a soft, unsettling laugh. My name is Nemor. And yours? A whale. 50. Her age. He felt a peculiar connection, a pull he hadn't experienced in decades. Nemor. 50. She moved closer, and he noticed a chain around her neck, dangling a small, intricate symbol he didn't recognize. Her gaze was direct, almost unnerving, yet it held a certain warmth that drew him in. They talked for what felt like hours, leaning against the cold brick wall of an old warehouse. Nemor spoke of energies, of unseen currents, of the power of belief. A whale, a practical man, found himself listening, captivated by her conviction, by the sheer force of her personality. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She had an intensity that both thrilled and subtly unsettled him. He found himself liking her, more than liking her. He felt a spark of something new, something forbidden and exciting. He didn't tell Shay. Not at first. It felt too fragile, too new, too much like a betrayal of the quiet devotion he'd maintained for Louise's memory. He met Nemor for coffee, then for dinner. The dates became a secret world a whale inhabited, a clandestine joy that brought a lightness to his step he hadn't felt in years. Nemor was enchanting, mysterious, speaking in riddles and metaphors, but always with a kind of knowing look in her eyes that made a whale feel profoundly seen. He was falling, slowly, irrevocably. Chapter 3. The Unsettling Invitation. The invitation came after a few weeks, whispered over a half-eaten plate of pasta. Come to my house, a whale. See where I truly live. A whale's heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. He imagined a quaint, cozy home, perhaps a little bohemian, but nothing prepared him for the reality. Nemor lived on the outskirts of town, in an old Victorian house swallowed by overgrown ivy. The gate creaked ominously as he pushed it open. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of shadows and strange artifacts. Every surface was adorned with candles, some melted down to puddles of wax, others unlit, waiting. There were intricate tapestries depicting unknown constellations, shelves filled with dried herbs, crystals of all sizes, and a collection of ancient-looking idols carved from dark wood. The air was thick with the scent of incense, a cloying sweetness that made his head spin. A whale felt a prickle of unease trace its way up his spine. This wasn't just spiritual, it was obsessive. There was an altar in the living room, draped in velvet, with a large, polished stone at its center. He saw unfamiliar symbols drawn on the walls in what looked like charcoal. It's unique, a whale managed, trying to sound appreciative, but his voice was tight. Nemor laughed, a low, throaty sound. It is my sanctuary, where I connect with the true currents of the universe, where I perform my work. Her eyes, those luminous eyes, fixed on him, and for a moment, he felt exposed, as if she could see the very thoughts forming in his mind. He stayed for dinner, a simple meal of lentil soup and homemade bread, but his appetite was gone. He kept glancing at the strange objects, feeling a chill despite the warmth of the roaring fireplace. Nemor seemed to glow in this environment, her movements fluid and deliberate, her every gesture imbued with a mystical air. He left feeling profoundly disturbed, yet the pull of her enigmatic presence remained. He told himself it was just her eccentricities, her unique way of life. He was 52. He should be open to new experiences, shouldn't he? Chapter 4. The Ritual. A whale returned to Nemor's house a week later. He told Shay he was meeting an old colleague for dinner. The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't bring himself to explain Nemor to his son. Shay, with his grounded practicality, would never understand. This time, Nemor was insistent. Stay, a whale. Let me show you what I truly do. Let me cleanse your aura, prepare you for the true connections waiting for you. A whale hesitated. His rational mind screamed at him to leave, to run from this strange, intense woman and her unsettling home. But the part of him that craved connection, that was tired of the quiet ache of loneliness, pushed him forward. He agreed. Nemor led him to the center of the living room, where the altar pulsed with an unseen energy. She lit several candles, their flames dancing like tiny, hypnotizing spirits. She instructed him to sit cross-legged on a velvet cushion. A whale, feeling a ridiculous mixture of curiosity and dread, complied. Nemor began to chant, a low, guttural rhythm that vibrated through the floorboards. She waved her hands over him, her fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. The scent of incense intensified, making his head feel heavy, his limbs strangely numb. Then it started. A tremor, faint at first, then growing in intensity, shook his body. It wasn't just a shiver. It was a deep, internal vibration, as if his very molecules were coming undone. He felt a sickening lurch in his stomach, and then, horrific beyond imagining, his hands began to shimmer. They faded, becoming translucent, then vanished altogether. A scream caught in his throat. Nemor, he choked out, his voice a desperate croak. Stop. What are you doing? Her chanting only grew louder, more insistent. His legs, too, began to waver, their outlines blurring. Panic, cold and absolute, seized him. This wasn't some harmless New Age practice. This was something ancient, terrifying, and utterly malevolent. Shimona, Nemor intoned, her eyes blazing, fixed on him with a predatory hunger. The world tilted. A whale felt an unbearable pressure, as if something was being ripped from the very core of his being. His vision blurred, then exploded into a kaleidoscope of dark, swirling colors. He felt himself stretching, pulling, disassociating from his body, a phantom sensation of being sucked through a narrow, dark tunnel. He heard a pop, like a cork leaving a bottle, and then, nothing. A whale's body, lifeless and strangely serene, was found the next morning in a park, sprawled beneath a weeping willow, untouched by violence. The authorities, baffled, listed the cause of death as unknown, a mysterious cardiac arrest, perhaps. Another inexplicable death, just like Louise's. Chapter 5. The Unanswered Questions. Shay received the call in the early hours of the morning. His father, dead. The words hammered against his skull, refusing to make sense. A wail. His strong, quiet father. Gone. The funeral was a blur of sympathetic faces, hushed whispers, and the suffocating scent of lilies. Shay moved through it like a ghost, numb with shock. First his mother, then his father, both taken in the cruelest, most inexplicable ways. His world, which had seemed so stable under a whale's steady presence, now felt like crumbling earth beneath his feet. He buried his father next to his mother, in the quiet, peaceful cemetery overlooking the town. The jewel headstones, bearing the names Louise and a whale, stood as silent sentinels to his profound loss. For a week, Shay existed in a haze of grief. He barely ate, slept fitfully, and the house, once a haven, now felt hollow, echoing with the silence of absence. His only solace came from a strange, compulsive need to visit the graveside. Every night, after the last rays of sun had dipped below the horizon, he would drive to the cemetery, sit on the cold bench, and stare at the twin stones. He wouldn't cry. He would just sit, yearning for answers, for a sign, for something. Chapter 6. A Cold Reunion. The night was moonless, shrouded in an inky blackness that pressed down on the cemetery. The air was still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Shay shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. This was his ritual now, his nightly vigil, a futile attempt to feel close to the two people who had shaped his world. He was staring at his father's headstone, a silent conversation forming in his mind, when a disturbance rippled through the air. A cold draft, cutting through the stillness, made the hairs on his arms stand on end. A faint, almost transparent mist began to coalesce near a whale's grave. Shay's breath hitched. His mind screamed denial, but his eyes, wide with terror, refused to look away. The mist swirled, thickened, and then, horrifyingly, began to take shape. A familiar shape. A man. His father. A whale's form was translucent, shimmering like heat haze, his features indistinct, but undeniably him. His eyes, though lacking the usual warmth, held an urgent, desperate plea. "Dad," Shay whispered, his voice cracking. Pure, unadulterated fear surged through him. He scrambled to his feet, ready to bolt, to run until his lungs burst. "Shay, don't run." A whale's voice was a whisper, carried on the wind, echoing in Shay's mind. It was his father's voice, but hollow, ethereal, filled with a profound sorrow. Shay froze, rooted to the spot by a horrifying fascination, a desperate need for answers. A whale's ghostly form drifted closer, his features solidifying slightly, revealing the same bewildered expression he'd worn in life. "Son, listen to me. I don't have much time. You need to know what happened." Shay could only nod, his heart hammering against his ribs. "It was her," a whale rasped, a tremor in his spectral voice. "Nemor. The woman I met." He paused, as if gathering his strength. "She's not what she seems. She's a spiritualist. But not in a good way, Shay. She murdered me. She murdered your mother, too." The words hit Shay like a physical blow. Louise. His mother. Murdered. The cold, inexplicable death now had a name, a face. "She took my soul, Shay," a whale continued, his voice growing fainter. "And many others. She keeps us imprisoned in dark bottles. We're all sleeping with a bad dream, Shay. Hunted by ghosts of ourselves. It's a torment. You have to find her. You have to get our souls back." All of us. A whale's form flickered, became more transparent. You must find Nemor. She has the bottles. She took my soul. Find her. Release us. The ghostly image of his father wavered, then dissipated, leaving Shay alone in the oppressive darkness, the words ringing in his ears, a chilling, impossible truth. His fear slowly transformed into a burning resolve. This wasn't some nightmare. This was real. His father, a ghost, had asked for his help. He would do it. He would find Nemor. He would set them free. Chapter 7. The Alliance. The next morning, the terror of the night had not faded, but the resolution had solidified. Shay knew he couldn't face this alone. His father, a ghost, had given him a mission. He needed help. Practical help. He thought of Vernerica. Vernerica, 24, was an old friend from university, now a graphic designer, known for her sharp wit and even sharper mind. She was pragmatic, resourceful, and utterly fearless. She also had an uncanny knack for problem solving. Shay knew she'd dismiss the ghost part, but he could present it as a quest for justice, for answers about his father's death, hinting at a dangerous cult. He met her at a coffee shop. Vernerica, I need your help with something extraordinary. He laid out the bare bones of the story, omitting the ghostly visitation at first, focusing on the mysterious deaths of his parents and the woman named Nemor. He described Nemor's strange house, the spiritual obsession a whale had alluded to. Vernerica listened, her brow furrowed, her analytical mind already at work. So, you think this woman, this Nemor, is responsible for your father's death, and possibly your mother's? She asked, her voice calm but her eyes alight with a challenge. And you think she's some sort of, she searched for the word, black magic practitioner. Something like that, Shay admitted, then, steeling himself, he added, and I know this sounds crazy, but my dad. He spoke to me. From his grave. He told me she traps souls in bottles. Vernerica stared at him for a long moment, then slowly, a faint smile touched her lips. Okay, Shay, you've officially lost it. But I'm intrigued. And if there's even a shred of truth that this woman hurt your family, we're going to find out. Besides, she winked, a good mystery is always a good story. Let's start with finding this Nemor. Armed with the scant information a whale had managed to convey, a general idea of the house's location on the outskirts, Shay and Vernerica began their investigation. Shay felt a whale's ghostly presence, a subtle guide, a faint whisper that seemed to point them in the right direction. It took them 2 days of driving, searching, and discreet inquiries, but eventually, they found it. The ivy-covered Victorian, exuding an aura of malevolence even in the daylight. Chapter 8. The Viper's Den. They parked Shay's car a few blocks away, approaching Nemor's house on foot, moving cautiously through the overgrown garden. The house looked even more sinister in the dim light of dusk. Okay, Shay whispered, I'll go to the front door. You hide somewhere in the garden, stay out of sight. If something goes wrong, you're the backup. Vernerica nodded, her eyes scanning the surroundings, already spotting potential hiding spots. She found a thick rhododendron bush near the side of the house, offering good cover and a view of the front door. She pulled a small, heavy wrench from her backpack, a last-minute addition to her toolkit, just in case. Shay took a deep breath, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He walked up to the front door and knocked, the sound echoing ominously in the stillness. A moment later, the door creaked open, revealing Nemor. She hadn't changed. Her eyes still held that unnerving luminescence, but now, knowing what he knew, Shay saw the predatory gleam beneath the surface. Well, Nemor said, a slow, knowing smile spreading across her lips. A whale's son. I had a feeling you'd come. Come in, Shay. Let's talk. Her voice was smooth, inviting, a serpent lulling its prey. Shay hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then stepped inside, keeping his guard up, attempting to appear calm. The air was heavy with the familiar, cloying scent of incense, mixed now with something else, a faint, metallic tang. Where is my father, Nemor? Shay demanded, his voice trembling slightly despite his efforts. What did you do to him? Nemo's smile widened, twisting into something chilling. Your father is where he needs to be. With the others. At peace, in a way you couldn't understand. A glint of something sharp, something metallic, appeared in her hand. Before Shay could react, before his mind could even register the danger, Nemor swung. A heavy log of wood, surprisingly massive, arced through the air. It connected with a sickening thud against Shay's temple. Agony exploded in his head, then darkness. He collapsed to the floor, consciousness slipping away. Vernerica, peering through the leaves of the rhododendron, had seen the flicker of movement, witnessed the brutal blow. Her blood ran cold. She clenched the wrench in her hand. She had to get inside. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. Shay's world swam back into focus, a dizzying spiral of pain and confusion. His head throbbed, and he felt a searing ache in his wrists and ankles. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and realized he was tied, tightly, to a thick wooden pole in the center of the room. This wasn't some ordinary pole. It was adorned with the same strange symbols he'd seen earlier, and emanated a faint, pulsing energy. Nemor stood over him, her face alight with a dark, triumphant glee. She was chanting again, the same guttural sounds a whale had described, her hands moving in intricate, weaving patterns around him. The air grew heavy, crackling with an unseen energy. Shay felt the familiar, terrifying tremor begin in his body, the sensation of his essence being pulled, stretched. He was next. His soul was about to be ripped from his body. Panic threatened to overwhelm him, but then, a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye. A shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows of the room. Vernerica. While Nemo's focus was entirely on Shay, her back to the side of the room, Vernerica had found a way in. She'd slipped through an unlocked side door, finding herself in a utility shed that opened into the main house. Among the gardening tools, she'd seen it, a heavy, double-bladed felling axe. Her heart had pounded, but her resolve had been steel. Now, silent as a ghost, Vernerica moved, her gaze fixed on the back of Nemo's head. The axe felt heavy, cold, and utterly right in her grasp. She raised it slowly, carefully, her breath held. Nemor continued her ritual, oblivious, her chant rising to a fever pitch. Shay's body began to shimmer, his limbs fading in and out of view. His soul was on the precipice, about to be extracted. Shimona! Nemor shrieked, her voice reaching a crescendo. At that precise moment, Vernerica lunged. The axe came down with brutal, unforgiving force. Not once, but again and again. 3 times, the heavy blade struck Nemo's head. The sound was sickening, wet and crushing. Nemor crumpled without a sound, her body twitching once, then falling limp, her head a shattered, unrecognizable mess. The chanting stopped. The eerie energy in the room dissipated. Shay's body solidified instantly, the terrifying sensations receding. He lay there, gasping for breath, staring at the horror of Nemo's lifeless body, then at Vernerica, who stood panting, the axe still clutched in her hands, her face pale but determined. Chapter 10. The Unbottling of Souls. Vernerica quickly untied Shay, her hands shaking slightly. Shay struggled to sit up, his head still pounding, but the immediate, soul-rending terror was gone, replaced by a strange sense of victory mixed with lingering horror. Are you okay, Shay? Vernerica asked, her voice tight with adrenaline. Yeah, I think so, Shay croaked, rubbing his wrists. You saved me. He looked at Nemo's body, then back at Vernerica, a silent acknowledgement of the monstrous act she'd committed, an act that had saved his life. Then, a sudden, piercing thought cut through the fog of pain. A whale's words. She keeps us imprisoned. In dark bottles. The bottles, Shay exclaimed, scrambling to his feet, ignoring the dizziness. My dad said she kept the souls in dark bottles. Upstairs. In her bedroom, He said it was dark. Veronica, ever practical, didn't question it. Lead the way. They moved through the silent house, the air still thick with the lingering scent of incense and the unspoken terror of what had just transpired. Shay, guided by instinct and a feeling that his father's presence was somehow stronger now, led him up the creaking stairs. The bedroom was indeed dark, curtains drawn, creating an oppressive gloom even in the afternoon. The air was stagnant, heavy. Shay fumbled for a light switch, but Veronica, ever cautious, stopped him. The less light, the less likely they were to disturb whatever lingering malevolence might be present. They found them on a series of shelves built into the wall, in shadowed alcoves, rows upon rows of dark, opaque glass bottles. They varied in size, but all were sealed with antique-looking corks, and within each, Shay could sense a faint, almost imperceptible hum, a trapped energy. These were them. The souls. My God, Veronica whispered, her voice filled with an awe that bordered on revulsion. We have to break them, Shay said, his voice firm. He grabbed the nearest bottle, a small, squat one, and without hesitation, hurled it towards the living room below, aiming for the hard, wooden floor. Crash! The sound echoed through the house, sharp and resonant. A faint, almost imperceptible wisp of shimmering light rose from the broken shards on the living room floor, a silent sigh of release. They worked together, a frenzy of purpose. One by one, Shay and Veronica grabbed the dark bottles, their contents unknown, and hurled them down the stairs. Each shatter was a sound of liberation, a small victory. Crash, crack, smash. The living room floor quickly became a glittering expanse of broken glass, each shard reflecting the dim light, and from each shattered bottle, a faint, luminous wisp ascended, swirling upwards, then vanishing. They threw them all. Every last bottle. The air in the house seemed to lighten, the oppressive weight lifting. When the last bottle was smashed, the silence that followed was profound, cleansing. Shay felt a deep, inner calm settle over him, an intuitive sense that something fundamental had been set right. Chapter 11. Farewell, Father. A week later, Shay found himself back at the cemetery. The sun was setting, casting long, peaceful shadows over the headstones. He carried no fear this time, only a profound sense of closure and an eager anticipation. He sat on the bench, watching the last rays of light fade from a whale's headstone. The air was cool, but not cold. He waited. And then, it happened. Not with a chill or a mist, but with a gentle shimmer of light, a whale appeared. This time, he wasn't translucent or wavering. He was whole, solid, his face etched with the familiar lines of love and contentment. He looked exactly as Shay remembered him, alive and at peace. Dad, Shay breathed, tears welling in his eyes. A whale smiled, a genuine, luminous smile. My son, you did it. You truly did it. His voice was clear, strong, filled with a profound gratitude. You freed us all. Me. And your mother. Shay's heart swelled. Mom. A whale nodded, his gaze drifting to Louise's headstone beside his own. She's here. We can finally rest. All of us. No more bad dreams. No more being hunted. We can sleep now, Shay. A true, dreamless sleep. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled Shay's knees, washed over him. The unanswered questions, the gnawing pain of two lives inexplicably taken, were finally resolved. He finally knew how his dad had died. And how his mom had died too. Thank you, Shay, a whale said, his form beginning to soften, to glow with a gentle inner light. For everything. He turned, a silent farewell in his eyes, and walked slowly towards his grave. As he reached the headstone, his form dissolved into the earth, not vanishing, but melting, becoming one with the quiet ground. And then, a whale was gone. Not as a ghost, not as a haunting presence, but as a soul finally at rest. Shay watched, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He wouldn't appear as a ghost anymore. Both the whale and Louise, reunited in the peaceful earth, were finally sleeping well. Shay sat there for a long time, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The cemetery, once a place of fear and sorrow, now felt sacred, a place of profound peace. He had avenged his parents, freed their souls, and found the answers he never thought he'd get. He could finally begin to heal. The end. Story by Kayode E.